All right, now that we have our sound effects created, we can start using them in Resolve. But before we do that, I just want to talk really quickly about the timeline and tracks. So when we brought our clips in, we automatically got two tracks on the timeline. We got a video one and an audio one track. The video one, audio one tracks are linked. You can see that the audio and the video have a little link here on the clips. There's no audio for the image clips that we brought in, and if we had only brought image clips in, we would have only gotten a video track. But since we brought in video files, they automatically have an audio track with them. So we have these two tracks and they're ready to go. In fact, we could rename them. If we pull this down a little bit, we could rename this main audio, and we'll rename the top one main video. All right, now we're going to want a couple of additional audio tracks for our sound effects so that we can keep things organized. So I'm going to right click over here, say add track stereo, because we recorded in stereo from our iPhone. And if I pull this down just a hair, I can rename this sound. We'll just call it SE1, sound effects 1. And we'll do another one, add track stereo, because I know I'm going to want 2. And we'll pull this down just a hair. We'll call this SE2. And now we have 4 total tracks, 1 video and 3 audio tracks that we can start using. Later on, we'll be adding additional video tracks so that we can do overlays and other things, but right now we're good to go to start adding our sound effects. Okay, so now that we have our additional audio tracks, we can go ahead and start dragging in some of our sound effects. So I've created a bunch of sound effects already for all of the, well, maybe not all of them, but some of the things that we're going to want to do here. And I'm just going to shift click from the top. So click here, shift, click at the bottom, and I'm just going to drag all of those into our media pool. So it'll bring all those files in, and you can see that we now have a bunch of audio files in here. So we're just going to go through really quickly, adding a couple of things in. We'll work on the steps first. So what I usually do is start with a spot that I know I'm going to want a sound effect. So we'll probably add some sound effects coming off of camera for the footsteps before they actually get there, so we can kind of introduce the characters that are coming in. But I kind of just I'm using the right arrow here to just step through one frame at a time, and we can see that we know the guy is taking a step right there, right? That was a plant off camera. That's the first plant. So I'm just going to grab one of my sound effects here, and we're going to take step concrete, and I'm going to switch this view so that we can see a little better. So you can switch the view up here between the image view and a list view. I'm going to go to the list view for now so that we can actually see the name of the files here. I'm going to take step concrete 1, and we can actually preview this if we just double click on, oops, not the name, double click on the audio here. It'll let us preview it over here. You can hear that that's a step file. So we could say, I like that. Might try this one. Okay, so they might sound a little strange now. I've really isolated out the sounds and done some processing to them, but I'm going to grab step concrete 1 that I recorded in the garage, and I'm going to bring that down. I'm going to put it right here where we are. So I'm actually going to turn snapping on, make sure snapping is on to start with, so you can get it right on the timeline cursor so that it will stay right there. So another little trick is that if you hold Alt and then use the mouse wheel, you can zoom in. If you're in the edit mode, you can zoom in, and that allows us to see things a little larger. So I'm going to go ahead and play this. You can see that I've got a step, and it sounds a little strange. We're gonna help fix that in a minute, but I'm going to grab step concrete 2, and I'm going to go ahead and get to the next plant. So there's a plant right there, so it's kind of right after this one. Now, it's helpful to turn snapping off once you get one of your clips on the timeline, your audio files. And I actually drug that to the wrong one. Let's just drag it down to SE1, or sound effect 1. I had drug it to the main audio. But we want to take step 2, and we'll put that right here after this one. And in this case, snapping wouldn't have hurt us because we kind of want it right after it, but let me see here. You can see that those steps happen really quickly together. Okay, so we just kind of keep stepping through, and we get all the plants. So there's a plant is actually happening right there. So let's turn snapping back on, drag it out to there, and then step through here a little bit. And there's another plant, so we'll go back and we'll take step 1. Now what we can do is instead of dragging them from our media pool every time, we can hold Alt and just drag one of them. It'll make a copy of it, and it'll put it right there. So now we've got that step, the first one, copied over to where we wanted it. Okay, so they're a little loud and they don't quite sound right. So what we want to do, I'm going to Control Z to undo to undo that first copy that I did. And we're going to go back over here to this first clip, and you can see there's this little bar, and it's a little hard to see is if we expand our audio track a little bit right here, it gets a little bit bigger, and there's this white line at the top. That is actually the sound level of that clip, that audio track. There's also over here on the right side this mixer, and if it doesn't show up for you, you can click up here at the top. It'll turn the mixer on and off. This will allow us to adjust the overall sound level of the entire track, but we want to just edit the sound level of this one clip right now. So to do that, all we do is just take this, hover over it. You'll see it's got the up and the down arrow. We can just drag this, and you can see that we're going from 0 decibels, which is where we were. Doesn't mean 0 decibels. It means the median. It doesn't mean that there's no sound, but we can drag it down and say we want to just make this a little quieter. I'm going to drag it all the way down to like -9. You can see that's a really soft sound now. Okay, so if I drag the other one, I'm going to try the same thing close to -9, like that. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, so those aren't bad. They're still a little loud. I might just drag them down a little more, maybe -11. Let's see what that sounds like. Okay, really soft. Now again, we're going to add some other ambient sounds on top, so it'll help this. And the camera's not super close, so maybe we drag it down even a little bit more. This is just something you have to kind of play with. Let's go all the way to 18 just to see where that puts us. There we go. So really soft sounds. I'm not sure you're even going to be able to pick those up, but I'm going to go ahead now and copy that. So again, it didn't change our original media clip up here. If we drag another clip down here, it's going to be the same sound. See, it's loud again. We don't want to do that because we kind of have the sound that we want it. So for now, we're going to take this one, we're going to hold Alt, and we're just going to drag over, and let's find our spot again for our next plant. There's our next plant right there. So let's drag it over and it'll snap there. And then there's another plant right there. So I'm going to drag the second step. I'm going to hold Alt, drag it over so it copies it. Go do that a couple more times. We'll just repeat there. We're going to take this one. We're just kind of alternating this sound. You can mix it up and put the same sound twice in a row if you want. And then another plant. We'll take this one. All right, so let's just see what that sounds like. Okay, so we're lined up pretty well. They sound like they're hitting at the right time. It's, very basic right now, but I'm going to go ahead and add in the rest of the footsteps on track 1 for the person coming in from the right side. And then on track 2, I'm going to add the footsteps for the guy coming in on the left side, and they'll kind of overlap. And I might even use the garage steps too. So let's listen to these real quick. If I double click on that, that's a little bit different sound. There's a little different one. Okay, so you can see that we have some different sounds, concrete step sounds, and I'll pick a couple of those and I'll use them for the guy coming in on the left and the guy coming in on the right, and then I'll come back and show you what we've got. Okay, so I've finished sequencing in the footsteps, just kind of a basic rough in, and you can notice a couple of things right off. You can see that this white line, which is our decibel line or volume line, it ramps up a little bit from left to right. So I'm showing that they're just kind of an audio cue of them coming in from off camera. And on the right, on the bottom track, I did the same thing. So the bottom track, SE2, is the guy coming in from the left. The top track, SE1, is the guy coming in from the right. And if we just listen to this real quick, you can see that we've got the footsteps sequenced together, and they're both kind of sound like they're walking in together. Now, if we mute the top track and we listen to just the bottom, you get an idea of what this sounds like by itself. You can hear it kind of ramp up a little bit and get a little louder. So it's just, again, a little audio cue. You don't have to do that. It doesn't necessarily make sense that the camera is placed where it is. It wouldn't necessarily mean that the sound effects would be softer as they're coming in off camera. It's just a way to kind of cue the audience that there's going to be people coming in off the scene and just kind of slowly kind of ease into the audio of that scene. So anyway, I've sequenced these footsteps now, and we kind of got them overlaid. I'm going to add in some other things using exactly the same technique. Now, in this case, I just wanted to point out we're going to need another audio track because we're going to want to have some ambient noise. In fact, I'll probably have something like ambient. I'll add another stereo track down here. I'll go down to where we can actually see it, and we'll call this one SE Ambient. All right, so this will be our ambient noise track, and that'll just be where we'll put like kind of city sounds or whatever. I think I have a city sound that we've recorded previously, and I'll use that. And sound effect 1 and 2 can continue to be used for other things. Now, in cases where we have other things going on, so we'll have voiceover happening at the same point. So we'll have a voice track that we'll add later once we do the voiceovers. We might even have some additional stuff. Maybe we want to have another track for the handshake or something that, or not a handshake, I don't know. Another track for a glass breaking, or who knows, right? You can add as many audio tracks as you want so that you can have the audio kind of stacked and layered in one place. I try to keep them to a minimum. I only add them when I absolutely need them, and then I continue to name them kind of generically, so SE1, SE2, SE3, or whatever. The ambient track will always be ambient noise, so it can just kind of continue throughout a scene, but then the other sound effect tracks, I try to keep them generic so that I can use them whenever I need them. If I have places where I've already got two things layered, I can use the third one. So anyway, that's just kind of a quick overview of how we do this. I'm going to go ahead and sequence in some more audio, try to get kind of audio for the whole thing, and we'll come back and look at it. I'll talk about some of the little things that we've done to get those in place, and then we'll move on. All right, so as I was adding in sound effects, I came across a scenario that I thought we should talk about. So one of the things you'll want to do a lot of times is add some black screen or some blank space and have sound continue. So you'll have a black screen maybe to transition between scenes. You'll fade into a black and then have some sound that continues or starts up and then fades into your transitions into your next scene. And when you do that, there'll be some sound that you want to stick with the scene, and there'll be some sound or some tracks that you just want to lock and not have them do anything. So to illustrate that, I just wanted to show, if we wanted to insert this black screen, I just created a black JPEG image in GIMP, but you can use any software that you have to just create a 1920 by 1080 black image, and you can use that anywhere you want to just have some black screen. What I did is I created that and drug it in, and I want to put that in between these two scenes. So I'm going to right click on it up here, and I'm going to say insert clips, selected clips into timeline. So I insert it, and you can see that it pushed everything out, but it also cut this track here, this audio track, and it pushed it out. I wanted that track to continue, but I wanted these others to get pushed out. So I'm going to undo that, Control Z, and that'll put me back here. Now, if I lock A4 and A5, these are the ambient soundtracks, and I don't want them to move, and I do the same thing again, this time you'll see that it inserts and it pushes everything that isn't locked out, and it keeps all of that stuff synced up, because the lock and the door sound, and this is a light switch sound, those were already synced. I don't want those to move, and I don't want things to get out of sync, but I want this black image to show up in there. So now what we have is the black image will fade into this black. It'll take however long it takes, and I probably won't keep it that long. And you can see these sounds continue, and then things go like there. So I just wanted to show that a couple of things. First off, that you can just drag images in and they can just be used as clips. I can extend the length of this if I want, but also that you can lock layers and you can have them stay when you're doing edits to other layers. And that's really important, because when you've synced up your audio and you've got things, you've got a longer movie, let's say you have a movie that's 30 minutes long or even just 5 minutes long, and you have audio synchronized downstream somewhere and you want to insert things in the middle, you need to know which layers should move and which layers shouldn't move, and that's really important to keep things in check. So anyway, just wanted to show that real quick, and I'll continue editing the sound effects in.